Okay, sir. So we can start. Good evening, sir, Dr. Mohan Sundar, and to
Evening.
all my friends and viewers here. This webinar is on the interesting and current issue of our planet, namely change in climate, green earth, and effect on human lives. The topic of today's webinar is People, Planet, and Physicians, the effect of climate change on doctors. But the approach of this webinar is not only restricted to the medical fraternity, but also inclusive of every human life. Presenting this webinar, I am Ishwar Rajesh, a pre-final year medico and college chairperson of Indian Medical Association Medical Student Network, Madras Medical College, Chennai. I am honored to introduce with immense pleasure today's orator, Dr. Mohan Sundar Radhakrishnan, currently a researcher at the UNESCO IHE Delft Institute for Water Education, Netherlands. His roots are from Tamil Nadu, and we are proud to have one of ours as a speaker today. After his bachelor's degree in engineering from University of Madras, he obtained a post-graduation in municipal water and infrastructure and PhD from the UNESCO IHE Institute. He has worked in various capacities in our own country for local governments, including Tamil Nadu Sewage Outline Master Plan and Integrated Urban Water Management Argyam, Bangalore. He has also worked in various international projects based in India, like LEA Associates South Asia, Guwahati, and Japan Bank for International Cooperation, Kerala. Following his doctoral degree, he served in various countries abroad. To name a few, Maternity and Infant Healthcare Mission in Laos, Medical Sans Frontiers, Paris, Water and Habitation Engineer in Pyongyang, South Korea, and is also associated with International Committee for Red Cross, Geneva, Switzerland, and United Nations UNESCO project at Netherlands. Without further ado, let us begin our session today. Dr. Mohan Sundar, sir, if you will.
Thank you, Ishwar. Thank you for the introduction. I hope you're all able to see my screen now. Good afternoon, everybody. My name, as Ishwar introduced, I am Mohan, and I am a researcher at the UNESCO Institute based in Netherlands. First of all, I would like to thank the young medical fraternity for giving me a chance to talk to all of them. Being an outsider, I think I consider it as a privilege to talk to young doctors and to other interested people. As Ishwar mentioned, today's topic is people, planet, and physicians. I have a background on researching about climate change, mainly into flooding of urban areas and how we are going to adapt it in the future. So I thought when Ishwar approached me to give a talk about people and planet and physicians, I thought, why not? Because it also gives me an opportunity to interact with young minds so that I can also learn more. I think on the screen you see these two people. Maybe I think some of you might be able to recognize this young girl, Greta Thunberg, who is now the poster or symbol for climate change action throughout the world. This young girl, who is now barely 17 or 18, she had the courage to start a strike, a single person strike on her own, which gathered a big momentum. And then now about 4 million people have protested against the lack of actions by governments against climate change. So, and then to the left, I think you also see a person in a PPE, an anesthetist, who is now currently trying to work about COVID. So I thought of starting the presentation with these two small narratives, one which shows the courage of a young girl against climate change, which is a kind of a chronic problem. And on the other side, we are also encountered with issues that are very acute, like COVID. These stories, they could seem far, but then I think it is also kind of very personal for me as well. Like when you talk about these two stories, or these two people, I'm also kind of affected personally by it. Like for COVID, for example, we lost a cousin who was also a doctor, Dr. Sukumaran. He passed away 2 weeks ago in Tamil Nadu. We lost him due to COVID in his line of action. So this is something that a story, or this is an action which also affects me and my family personally. And when you talk about climate change, it also has a kind of a personal touch to me, not because I'm researching on it, because I also know a doctor, a medical doctor who was based out of Syria. And then she had to leave Syria because of the war in Syria. And then she had to come to Germany, and then she has to start over all again. And then if you trace behind what really happened, many people also kind of put the civil unrest in Syria to climate change because of the famines that they had in the last decade, which kind of created a farmers' protest and unrest, and which kind of snowballed into a major crisis. So I think most of us, we kind of get exposed, or we kind of experience a disaster. I don't really know how many of you were affected during the Chennai flooding. Maybe I think it is also a good moment for you to reflect upon what happened during Chennai floods in 2015. And you could even think about what was the factor behind it. Is it climate change, or is it a normal rain incident, which was simply a bit higher, or is it due to inaction from our side? Maybe you can reflect on it as I am talking to you in the next 30 minutes or so. I'll try to keep this lecture short, in about 30 minutes. And when you talk about climate change, like what is this thing that we're talking about? What does it really mean? Like when you talk about climate change, are we talking about the changes that is happening every day, or we are talking about something that is happening over a long period of time? So most of us, like even many people, like even to me, it took me some time to understand the difference between what is weather and what is a climate. So when we talk about a weather, we talk about the things that are likely to happen every day. Like, for example, the mornings are cooler, the afternoons are hotter. The nights are even a bit more colder in Europe, where I live. But then it is a bit moderate in Chennai, where you are all now. And then this also changes with respect to seasons. Like the month of May is hotter than the month of December. So there is a change. So why are we really bothered about something that is happening naturally? But then I would just like to point out to the graph that you see here. Like you can see, this graph shows the x-axis shows the year, and the y-axis shows the carbon dioxide that has been emitted. And then if you look at carefully, here you can see the year 1970, and then to this end, you can see the year 2010. You could see the amount of carbon dioxide that has been emitted in the atmosphere in this last 40 years. Or in the last 50 years, I can say. Now we're in 2020. This is a bit older graph. So you can see the variation, like the amount of carbon dioxide varies. Like for example, if you look into year 1990, you can see a kind of an S curve here. Like it goes up, it comes down, it goes up and comes down. But then this is something quite normal. But then what you notice is we are not really seeing a flat curve like this. What we are seeing is a curve that is constantly going up. And this is what is a bit concern to all of us. Because like as the amount of carbon dioxide goes up in the atmosphere, and the other gases go up in the atmosphere, it kinds of heats up the atmosphere, and then that kinds of triggers a lot of changes. So what kind of, or why is it happening? Like maybe, is the amount of carbon dioxide going up, is it natural or is it artificial? So it is both. I would say it is both natural as well as artificial. The amount of greenhouse gases can go up because of natural variations in the solar cycles, and also due to volcanic eruptions. But then it is happening more and more due to human interventions. Like we are burning up more fossil fuels. We are traveling a lot, so we are emitting a lot of carbon. We use our industries are polluting, are emitting a lot of gases. So this is contributing more than what would occur naturally. So that is the reason why climate change is being labeled as a man-made thing and not a natural thing, because the man-made effects are much higher, or I think they are of a bigger magnitude or order than the natural causes. And what is likely to happen because of all these things? Like what happens? Because you have an effect because of this climate change on natural systems and also on human systems. When you look at what are the changes that climate change can bring about in the geophysical systems, you can have increasing floods in some places, and some places you might have less water, or it can even lead to drought. And because of the temperature increase, the ices in the polar caps, they're melting, and that is causing a sea level rise. So why should we bother about it? Like we are bothered about it because it can affect lives. It can affect human lives, it affects animal life, it affects plant life, and then it affects our livelihoods as well. And then, like, it can affect health. So we will see about this health aspect in much more detail in a minute. And it affects ecosystems because since we are a web of life, everything is connected, it kind of affects ecosystems. It affects economies. Like there are a lot of, when there is a lot of flooding and droughts, like you don't have good output from the farms, you cannot have, you might have diseases that can affect the societies. And then it also affects the other cultural aspects. And then it also affects our infrastructure as well. Like when you have more flooding and sea level rise, our roads and railway lines and electricity and grids, they can get affected as well. So it has effect on a number of things. So when you look at who is the most affected by climate change, you can say that the poor people and the disenfranchised groups, the people who are living on the edges of the society, the poor children, they are the ones who are likely to be affected most. And then there could be climate-related diseases like malaria, undernutrition, and diarrhea. But then this is not a disease that is only affecting poor people, because climate change in the long run is like corona. Like it can affect everybody. The high income bracket people, they're also not beyond the risk, climate risk. They can be affected because the extreme events, as I said, the number of flooding events are likely to go up. Like the Chennai floods, it occurred in 2015, but then it could occur very often because of climate change. And then that could kind of give rise to more diseases like malaria or diarrhea. And then it can impact, like if you see the table below, you see the risk of diseases from person to person, or waterborne diseases or foodborne diseases or vector diseases. So, and then climate change can increase the occurrences of hurricane, it can increase the occurrence of tornado, it can increase the heat wave, cold wave, flood and famines and fires. So by increasing as the number of events increase, you have the diseases increasing as well. So that is how it can affect the population. Like when I talk about increase, like how does climate change affect human health, you have a greater risk of injury due to intense heat waves and fires. Like as you say, like when the temperature goes up, you have to, your productivity comes down. It is quite normal for us. We are not as productive in a very hot day like in a nice, pleasant or a warm day. Like they say that a 2-degree increase halves the amount of work input. So like if you look at the graph here, I think we in India, like the red zone here, we in India are at a much higher risk due to increase in temperature. Like our productivity due to work might come down drastically. And then if you look at not only the productivity, like climate change can have an effect on undernutrition as well. Like if you look at the table below, like here, what I have given as a number of undernourished children in the year 2000 and the year 2050. For example, like in almost all the developing countries, we had about 148 million undernourished children, and then this was expected to go down due to the actions that are being taken at various levels by individuals and governments to about 113. But then due to climate change, there is a risk that the numbers wouldn't drop significantly and it would be around 139. So even in 50 years from now, we will have severely malnourished children in higher numbers. So that is not something that we would like to see. And then if you look at the consequences, it is not only undernourished children or less productivity in work. There is also a kind of risk due to things such as diseases, like spreading of diseases geographically. Like if you look at the map, this is China, and if you look at it, the green areas are these areas which are likely to affected by schistosomiasis in the year 20,000. But then the risk of schistosomiasis will increase from the green regions also to the blue regions here in 2050 because of the drop in temperature, because of the rise in temperature. Like the temperature is going to rise in these areas. So this vector is likely to spread to these regions as well. So there is also a risk that not only the diseases, the risk of diseases increases in the areas where it is, but then you will also have areas, new areas added up to the risk. So this is something significant. And then, as I said, there is also a chance where you can have an increase in risk in malaria, dengue, encephalitis, Lyme, plague, and hemorrhagic fevers. Like as the temperature increases, it kind of gives kind of creates an ambient environment or ambient atmosphere for these vectors to thrive. So the risk due to these vectors would increase in the future. But then there are also questions like, okay, is it only a case that climate change will only have negative effects? Will it not have some positive benefit on health? Yes, there are some positive effects due to the increase in climate, because in some areas there will be reduction in cold-related mortality. For example, like in extreme cases, like there are cold waves in regions like in Russia or in China or in the close to polar caps, where there are cold-related mortalities. So these things are likely to come down. And then there is going to be a geographical shift in food production. And then in some regions, the vectors would become less effective. So these are the positive effects that we might have due to the climate change. But then when you compare to the negative effects, these positive effects are quite less. So when you look at the overall effect of climate change, the negative, the effects on health is going to be negative. And then, so what can we do about it? Like, what are the measures that we can take to reduce the effects of climate change? So what we can try to do is, like, we can try to reduce vulnerability. Like, okay, many people are vulnerable to disease, so we can try to reduce the vulnerability of the people. And then the second best thing what we can do is, like, we can try to improve the public health measures such as provision of clean water and sanitation. Thereby, we reduce the probability of people getting risk due to water-related or waterborne diseases. So this is something that we can do. And the third thing we can do is, like, we can try to increase our vaccination campaigns and then try to improve the child health services. Thereby, we can reduce the vulnerability. And then we could also increase the capacity for disaster preparedness and responses. And the last thing that we can do is, like, we can try to alleviate poverty. Like, by taking people out of poverty, we are kind of building the capacity, the economic potential among the people to take care of themselves. So these are the things that we can do to reduce the impacts of climate change. But then by doing that, we also kind of get some co-benefits. So what are the co-benefits that we get by addressing some of the issues? Like when we reduce emissions, like we kind of bring down the pollutions. We also kind of improve the energy efficiency. So these are the benefits that we get. And then when you increase access to health, you kind of increase access to health, to other services like reproductive health services as well. And then by kind of like, if you really want to, by switching to less meat intensive products, we also kind of switch to a healthy diet. Thereby we can also reap some health benefits out of it. And by switching to active transportation like biking or like by cycling, we can also have health benefits. Like in Netherlands where I live, most of us bike to work. Like my university is about 10 kilometers from the place where I live, but then I try to bike to go by cycle at least twice or thrice a week. because that kind of keeps me healthy. And then we could also, the increase in green spaces also kind of reduces the local climate temperature, and then it kind of reduces the air pollution to some extent. So these are the kind of co-benefits that you can have by addressing the health issues due to climate change. But then, are we sure about these changes? Because like the thing is that we know that climate change is happening, but then what is that we are not very sure about it, how much it would change? Because these are the things that are a kind of chronic, and these are the things that are kind of changing with respect to every year and with respect to every season, and then it kind of building up. So how can we be sure of the magnitude of actions that we have to take? Because we know that we have to take actions, but then how much action should we? What is the action that we should take? Because we're not really sure about how much would be the change in sea levels. We are not really sure about how much temperature would increase and what would be the change in rainfall pattern. This is the confusion that people like me, we have when we have to advise governments or when we have to advise local bodies to take action. But then there is a kind of an agreed scenario among the scientists, and then that is kind of being represented in form of 4 different pathways. That is usually called as the representative concentration pathways, with these 4 numbers that you see on the screen, which is called RCP 2.6, RCP 4.5, RCP 6, and RCP 8.5. You might wonder what these numbers are. These numbers, they kind of indicate the amount of energy in watts per meter square that is being emitted because of the actions that we might take. For example, I can say, like what you see here is the graph that shows the temperature increase. Like you see the 2 extreme scenarios where if we as the citizens of the world, and if we as the citizens of the various governments, if we can take actions immediately and start reducing our carbon footprint or start reducing our carbon emission, we can limit the increase in temperature to about 1 degree centigrade in 2010. Or if you're not taking any action, and if it is business as usual, we let our emissions go the way they are, then we might end up in a situation where we have about 4 degrees centigrade increase in temperature in 2100, the year 2100. So these are the 2 extreme scenarios that we have, and then it all depends upon the amount of actions that we take. Like here you can see what might happen. Like if there is a 4 degrees centigrade increase in temperature, then our unique species will be threatened to a major extent. And then you might have a bigger weather events. And then you're also likely to have large scale flood events. So the risk increases. The risk of these events and the impact due to these events increases as the temperature increases. The lesser temperature increase happens, the better it is for us. So it is up to us, and it is up to our governments to take actions to kind of keep these impacts to a lower extent. So what are the different type of actions that we can take? Because maybe you must have come across these words like climate change mitigation and climate adaptation. So these are the 2 set of actions that people usually resort, like climate adaptation or the set of actions that we take to moderate or avoid the harm. Like, okay, if flooding is going to happen, so how can we avoid the harm due to flooding? Can we build a dike? Can we build a dam? Can we build a big wetland so that it can alleviate or it can reduce the effect of flooding? For example, in Chennai, we have this Pallikarnai marsh. So if we can kind of improve this marsh, we can let this marsh flood so that the city is not flooded. So if we are taking this kind of an action, that kind of an action is called as an adaptation action. But then the other set of action are called mitigation actions. Those are actions that are taken to reduce the greenhouse gases or to avoid greenhouse gases. For example, if we are switching to a clean energy, if we are switching to solar power, or if you are switching to wind power, thereby we reduce the emission of due to burning of coal, then we can kind of slow down the emission of greenhouse gases. For example, like let us say that in about 50 years from now, we can close down Ennur thermal power plant, and then we can have a kind of wind farms across the coast, or we can have a big solar farm all along the coast. So that type of action can reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, and then those actions can be called as a mitigation action. So these are the two different set of actions that we usually take. And you as doctors, I think this adage, prevention is better than cure. So rather than making actions, rather than doing something, and then rather than trying to take actions after it has happened, it is better to reduce the actions. So this is something that we can think about. And then there are also like a set of actions which kind of gives both adaptation benefit as well as mitigation benefit. Like if you see the graph below, these are the actions that are taken by Calgary city in US. Like what they try to do is, some of the water conservation action, it is both mitigatory in nature as well as adaptation in nature. And then when you switch to like education, like what we are doing it now, like what I'm trying to create is, I'm trying to create awareness, because these awareness can lead to mitigation actions, and it can also lead to awareness actions. Like having urban forests, it kind of cools the weather locally, thereby it kind of provides a mitigation effect, and it can also lead to adaptation benefits, like having green areas that can be flooded. So we can think about in both the ways. Maybe I think, because I'm giving you examples which are more convenient to me, or which I'm more comfortable with, because I come from an urban adaptation background. Maybe you as doctors, you can start thinking about what are the kind of mitigation actions and adaptation actions that you can do from public health point of view. And then what happens throughout is like when you can kind of mix and match all these actions. Like I said, we are kind of living in a situation where there is a climate change that is happening, and then we have different kind of futures. Like we can end up in a high risk future, or we can end up in a low risk futures. Like all the actions that I showed you in the slide above, you can kind of mix up, and you can kind of create a pathway, like which is the future that I'm targeting, where do I really want to go, and where do I want to be in 2000. So you can kind of choose the action that you want to take with your society, with your neighborhood, with your governments, with the NGOs, or with the international bodies, and then we can kind of farm pathways. And people like me, we kind of develop these pathways. Like on the screen, what you see is a kind of a pathway. Like on the bottommost, on the bottom right, you see a pathway that our team developed for one of the neighborhoods in Melbourne, in Australia. Like there, we developed a kind of a pathway of what kind of actions that the neighborhood can take as the sea level rises. So there they had a problem of flooding. So we said you can raise the floor level of your houses to about 20 centimeters for the next 10 years. If that is not sufficient, you can go to you can raise the floor levels of your houses by about 50 centimeters. And then even if that is not sufficient, you can kind of build a dike. But then you can also mix one or two options, and then you can reap multiple benefits. By doing that, you can avoid the harmful effects of flooding to about 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So it is more or less like create like a metro map. Like on the top left, you see the metro map of Moscow. So these are like more or less like the metro map where which you can create and go and proceed how you want to be in the future. So presentation of such maps makes decision making among general public, or among the city mayors, or politicians, or among different stakeholders a bit easier, rather than giving them a big report or presenting them a lot of graphs and confusing them. So this is also something that you can think about, like what kind of health actions can we take and mix and match, so that we can avoid the ill effects of malaria in another 10 years from now, or in another 20 years from now. So here I'm because I'm sorry for presenting this complicated graph, but then here I can see the potential for health impact reduction through adaptation actions. Like you can see the risk of undernutrition that we have now, the risk that we have due to vector-borne diseases here, and you can also see how this risk increases. Like, for example, under one particular climate scenario, the present risk increases. Here we have presented two different scenarios. Like, what if the temperature increases to 1.5 degrees centigrade? How this risk could increase, and how this risk could increase under a 4 degree centigrade increase in temperature. Naturally, you can see that the risk under 4 degrees centigrade is much higher than 1.5 degrees centigrade. Like you can see that the undernutrition risk here is much higher. Like it is even, it's much higher than what you have here in these scenarios. So there, by making comparisons like this of various scenarios, you can see for yourself how these risks are, and then what are the type of actions that you can take to bring down this risk. Like what we do, like what researchers like do, because I mainly deal with climate change, and then when we are asked to model scenarios regarding health, we also try to kind of involve researchers. Like here, what you see here, you see is Gwen. Gwen is a PhD fellow from Vietnam who is working with us to model water quality during flooding. Like the main work of Gwen, the main PhD work of Gwen is to model water quality during flooding in Vietnam. Like what she did was she went and sampled water quality during sampled water during flooding in Vietnam in the last 3 years, and she saw how the pathogens could spread. Like she kind of did the microbial risk assessment of salmonella present in water. She did the risk assessment due to rotavirus present in water. She also sampled and found out the presence of E. coli in water. And then we helped her to do how the flooding would increase in the future. And then she did a water quality modeling, like how the water quality will vary in future. So we kind of found out that the flooding in Vietnam is likely to increase. So naturally, the flood risk is also likely to increase in Vietnam. So so we came up with suggestions that the Vietnamese government has to focus not more on water quality. Like if you look at the picture below, like the people happily walk through the floodwaters, because for them they kind of have it once in 3 months or once in 4 months, so they're kind of used to it. So they call it as living with water. But then now we have given a report to Vietnamese government telling that the floodwaters are as bad as the water in the sewage. So they have to take some actions to eliminate or reduce the pathogens in the water. But how we try to address the whole thing is like we try to address the issues not as a discrete issue, because we try to address the issues from a systems approach. Like what I mean by systems approach is like looking at it not only from one perspective. Like I'm not looking at the problem from an engineer's perspective alone, or I'm not looking at the perspective of a doctor alone, or I'm not looking at the perspective of a politician alone. We are trying to look at things together, and we are trying to put it together. It is like looking at a human body. Like I think doctors, you understand human body much better than any of us. Like our human body, we call our human body as a human system, but then our system is made up of multiple systems. We have our blood circulation system, we have our digestive system, we have our respiration system, we have our muscular systems, many systems coming together and acting as one. So we also look at the climate change acting on our Earth's natural systems and artificial systems as one, and then we see the interactions between them, and then we try to kind of address, like, okay, if I kind of address the issues of flooding, where all is it likely to affect? Is it likely to affect only the human beings, or is it likely to affect the animals and plants as well? So how do we kind of take care of all these things together? So we kind of go for a holistic approach that can address all these things, or kind of minimize the negative impacts on one of these things. So when we do it, like we kind of try to put all the efforts taken all over the world together and try to look at it. Like for example, like some of you might be aware of these sustainable development goals. Like the Sustainable Development Goals are promoted by UN, and it has been accepted by most world governments, and they are trying to achieve this target in these 17 goals in another 30 years. So when you're talking about climate action is one of it. Like climate change action is only goal number 13. But then what we try to do is like we try to take actions that can not only address climate action, but it can also address very many goals as possible. Like for example, like our institute, the UNESCO IHE Delft, where we are mainly concerned about SDG 6, but then we also do a lot of actions that can address all the goals, other goals as well. Like for example, like we try to address zero hunger by addressing agricultural issues. We are trying to address quality education because we try to promote capacity building, and then we try to promote climate action. We try to promote better life on earth and life below water, and we also try to partnership like with others to promote partnerships. So we kind of so whatever actions that we do as engineers or as doctors, we should see to that our actions also have benefits in other domains as well. So that is something very important, and we try to do this through solid actions. For example, like this is the analysis that we did for the city of Guangzhou in China. So when we made an analysis for this city, we found out that the city has multiple problems like flooding, poor water quality, wetlands are getting polluted, uneven distribution of resources, and we found insecticides in the waters. So we kind of came up with solution, and then these solutions, what we had, we tried to came up with the solution so that it can address multiple SDGs, multiple Sustainable Development Goals. Like you can see, the flooding problem here, we came up with the solution to protect, to have improved flood protection facility. Thereby, we try to address at least 4 developmental goals. So maybe you can think of some health measures that can address the health impacts, which can also address multiple sustainable development goals. And how we do that is like we try to look at a big system as a system of systems, like like you doctors do. We look at like you look at human body as many systems and try to address the problems. So we also try to look at cities that has many systems, or urban ecosystems as many systems, and try to come up with solutions and try to get multiple maximum the benefit out of it. And the way we do that is like we not only restrict ourselves to our domain expertise. Like we try to go beyond. Like we try to go beyond our own domain and try to see how we can learn from other sector as well. Like for example, I look into software development and see what I can learn from them. I also look into the manufacturing of high-end military hardware and learn some techniques from there. And then I also look into automobile sector and try to learn something from them. And so we also look into how these aircraft companies operate, and we also try to learn from them as well. So we try to kind of learn from other disciplines. Like we try to go out of our comfort zone and we try to learn from other sectors as well. So I think one of the ways that we can understand climate change, or we can understand any problem better, is to step out of our comfort domain, knowledge domain, and then try to learn from other sectors, because I think that is something that we should be doing. And we should also be communicating that in a very simple manner and in a very effective manner, because sometimes we think that we kind of broadcast our ideas and solutions and people will naturally take it up, but then that is not the case. Sometimes we really need to simplify things or words beyond our domain expertise and try to put them into simpler terms. For example, what you see on the screen is the devastation happened due to this Typhoon Haiyan in Philippines in 2013. And one of my friend, he went and did some study in this area after that. When these people are given warning, they were said that a cyclone would come. But then those people were kind of used to the cyclones and they thought that it's not going to be severe. But then the devastation left behind was enormous, as you can see on the screen. And one of the person told my friend who went and did the survey, he said, "Sir, you should have told us that a tsunami is coming, would have left." yeah, the use of tsunami was the not scientifically correct word there, but then that could have kind of triggered the people to move out of the area and go further inland. So sometimes we really have to think of a way of how to connect with people, because it is not only that. Like, I can give you examples from India as well. Like, you can see an IAS officer literally pleading people to leave their houses during the cyclone that happened last year in Orissa. And on this side of the screen, you see my friend, Mr. Vijay Rajkumar. He's an IAS officer. He's the secretary for the differently abled people in Tamil Nadu government. And he played a big role. He went house by house and he went street by street during this Chennai 2015 floods and asked people to evacuate. And he kind of succeeded to evacuate a major locality around Saidapet. So sometimes we have to go out of our comfort zone. We really have to climb down the administrative ladder and go into the streets and do the communication so that we kind of make change on ground. And it is also about the way, it's also about how we say and how we talk and to whom we talk. Like because like why I put Dalai Lama and our most popular contractor Nesamani or Vadivelu here is like that is the range with which you can use the emotions, or you can use the authenticity, or by building of integrity that you can communicate to people. Like, because most of the times what we say is the way we say. So like, we as doctors, or we as engineers, or we as climate scientists, like we really have to try and communicate to a wide variety of audience, not only to us. And there are also agencies like Medicine Sans Frontier, whom I work with. So they are also kind of trying to do a lot of good work, and they try to communicate to people in a way. They try to fight corona or climate change in their own way, and then they succeed in a very big manner. Like for example, this United Without Border initiative started about 3 weeks ago in India. They really and they are now able to, they have generated more than about 1 crore to buy personal protective equipments for medical personnel. So what I would like to conclude, because I think I've gone way beyond the time given to me. So what I would try to see is like we should try to use our emotions. Like Greta, whom you see on the screen, she kind of used the anger of an youngster to kind of tell people about climate change and climate initiative. And then the other person you see on the screen, an anesthesiologist, Francesco from Italy, he's kind of telling us to care more for people and to be aware and to accept that the world has changed good for us. And I think rather than me telling, I think when the medical fraternity like you, because you command a lot of respect from us general public because of the care, concern and courage that you have in curing us. So when you talk, people tend to listen more to you. Maybe the whole world may not listen, but then at least your patients would start listening, because most of us listen to doctors. So I think I would like you to think climate change from your perspective and from others' perspective as well, and try to communicate this to your fraternity and to others as well. I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm sorry for being a bit over on time. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Ishwar.
Thank you so much, sir. We young doctors will also try for newer ways of mitigation and adaptation, as you have mentioned. Now, our eager viewers have some queries and desire more information. Shall I read out some questions that I've received, sir?
Definitely, sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that.
I have this question from Afra. They say that COVID-19 has brought a better change to climate and global temperature. Is it true, sir?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Afra. Like we could see, like as I mentioned, COVID-19 has mostly grounded us. Like we are not been traveling a lot. We are not been taking the planes a lot. If you see on the roads, like the number of cars on the roads have drastically come down. So that to an extent has contributed to the reduction in greenhouse gases. But to say that conclusively that it will have an impact on climate change is a bit too early. Like, as I said, we really have to wait for some more time to see how much change that it has brought about. But then if you look at it on the face, you see some improvement.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We have a question from Natasha. Sir, how are we going to assuage this generation's anxiety on the consequences that climate change might bring and give them hope?
Yeah, thank you, Natasha, for the question. Like, the aspiration is like, it is all about the actions that we can take. Like, as I said, the climate change is mostly man-made. Even though there are natural causes, it is mostly man-made. So it is we who created the problem. So we have the means. Like, now we have the technology. Now we can address the issues. The only thing is that it might take a bit of a time. Like, you as medical people, you understand the human body much better than me. Like, for example, like climate change is a kind of a chronic disease. Like, for a chronic disease, like when you start giving a treatment, it may not, your body may not start responding faster. But then you really have to keep continuing the efforts. Like, maybe you really have to take medication for a week or a month. Then you might start seeing results. So our climate system is similar to that. Like, when you start taking actions now, you may not see the effect tomorrow. Like, as I said, like when the first question you asked, has COVID brought down the slow down the impact of climate change? Maybe. Like, it is like taking a tablet for only for one day. So maybe we don't really know. Yeah. So when you start doing these actions, like now we started traveling less. So if you are conscious about start traveling less, then you could bring down the impact. Like maybe if you switch to a cleaner consumption, like maybe if you go for a less intensive meat diet. Like, as you know, meat generally involves production, a lot of energy in production. Like, for example, a kilo of lentils consume about 2,000 liters of water. But then 1 kilo of meat, it takes about 12,000 to 15,000 liters of water. So you know the amount of energy that goes into production of meat. So by switching to some actions, so over a long run, we have the control over the climate in a longer run. So that is the reason I showed you 4 different scenarios. Like, for example, I can even put it that in a better way. Like, if we all start taking actions, and if we can reduce the emissions by 75%, we can achieve a climate change of about 1.5 degrees centigrade, where the impacts would be lesser. If we don't do anything, then the temperature would start rising drastically, and it would be about 4 degrees centigrade in the future. So the consequence would be much higher. So we have the choice. So I am optimistic and I am positive about it.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Abhishek.
Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned about systems approach.
Yes.
How do you compare a city to a human body?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I really like to work on more on the systems approach. Like, for example, like whenever I talk to my students here in the institute who are mostly from engineering domain, when I ask them an example, give me an example of a system, most people talk about planetary systems, or they talk about the computers, because we call it as a system. No, but then I tell them that the best system that we have in the world is a human system. Yeah. Like, when you look at your palm or when you look at your hand, I think I'm quite surprised and amazed, like the number of systems that we have here. Yeah. You have a circulatory system that can carry good blood and that can carry the bad blood. And then you have a nervous system that is a kind of takes all the signals. And you have a skeletal system that supports your frame. And then you have a muscular system. Yeah. So you have multiple systems that are kind of separated only microns apart, and which are really functioning properly. So like extend this to the city. Like, maybe when you go out of your house now, or when you look out of your house now, look at the number of systems that you have. Yeah. So you have a water supply system. Yeah. And then you have an electrical system. Yeah. You have a sewage system. You have a solid waste collection system. Yeah. So these are the physical systems that you see that are very much interrelated. Like imagine there's no electricity, then there will be no water in your house. Yeah. Imagine somebody not collecting the garbage tomorrow, then the whole street would start stinking, and that would have an effect on other your health as well. Yeah. So that is how you have to look at the connections. Like maybe the connections are not obvious. Like, but then when you start looking at it, like when you start thinking about it, you can really establish each and everything. Maybe like one of the examples that I ask my students is like, how is a school, which is a part of the educational system in the city, connected to water supply or sewage? So most of the time, like the answer they give is yes, a school needs water. So you need a water supply system to the school. Yeah. A school generates wastewater because students use the toilets, teachers use the toilets. So you really have to take it away. So you need a sewerage system. And when I ask them, that's it, most of the people say, yeah, that's it. But then there is another important function of a school, that is awareness. Yeah. When you really want to tell people, okay, use less water. Yeah. So where do you start with? Because young people like you or kids, even younger people, the kids, they are the best ones where awareness starts from. Yeah. So like when I tell them, you really have to be aware of the climate. You really have to be aware of the type of water, amount of water that you use. Then it has a big effect on them. I still remember my niece coming and talking to me one day. She said, "Mama, my teacher told me that plastics are bad. So from tomorrow, I'm not going to carry plastic water bottles. I'll only carry steel water bottles." So she's barely 7 years old. Yeah. So that is how things are connected. So now do you see the connection between systems? Like now you see the connection between the school and the water supply system. Yeah. It is not only the physical flow of water or physical flow of wastewater, it is also the flow of knowledge, yeah, between systems. So that is how you kind of connect systems. So when you look at your smartphone and water supply is related, because with smartphone you can do a lot of things these days. Yeah, you pay your water bill, you pay your electricity bill, but you can also control like if you are a bit tech savvy, you can even control the water systems in your houses. Yeah, you can have different sensors in the houses, you can even start controlling it. So that's how you see the connection, or that's how you see the connection between different systems in the city issue.
Thank you, sir. I think this clearly explains how you compare a city with the human body. Now we have a question from Shruti. Some patients who suffer from climate change related disease refuse to accept it as a cause for their problem. In such cases, how do doctors effectively explain the burden of climate change to their patients?
Yeah, because I think it's a very difficult question that I think I should leave it to you to reflect upon, because sometimes, like it's better rather than giving facts. Yeah, because most of the time, like the educated intellectuals or the people sitting in the ivory tower, we always like to think in terms of data and facts and numbers. Yeah, because that's what we are comfortable with, because that's what we are taught with. But then most of the times we forget a very effective medium that is called a narrative or a story. Yeah. So I think we really have to look at the way of convincing our patients, or telling it to patients in form of stories. Yeah. So maybe I think that is an approach that might start giving results. Like I remember one of my uncle, he was a doctor, he was a skin specialist in Kanjipuram. So I used to sit with him in the clinic in his practice. So I see patients coming and then with skin problems which are month old or 6-7 months old, and then they come and talk to him and they ask him, "Doctor, I want this to be cured." And then they wanted to be cured immediately. And then he used to ask them, "Okay, what is your profession?" And they used to tell most people were farmers, and they used to tell, "Yeah, doctor, we are farmers." And then he used to tell them, like, "Okay, if you plant tomorrow, if you plant today, can you harvest tomorrow?" So, and then you would say, "No, it's not possible." So the disease is like that. Like you really have to take the medicine for at least 6 months or 6 weeks so that it kind of gets cured. So maybe I think you have to come up with a narrative, because the narrative has to be personal. Yeah. So as I said, when you have a personal narrative with fact, you can easily convince people. So try to think in terms of stories. Try to think in terms of local narratives and contexts. Yeah. So thereby you might be able to convince them.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not able to hear you, Ishwar. You are muted.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yeah, I can hear
Now
you. Yeah.
we have another question from Shruti. How can we find a common ground between being environmentally safe and economically powerful, considering that both are important in their own way?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very interesting question. Like, how can we be environmentally safe and economically viable? Because now the answer I would say is investing into research and investing into technology. Like, for example, like we are so used to comfort. Like now it is difficult for us to give up the comforts of the modern day life. Like, yeah, we have 24 hours water supply, we have electricity 24 hours. Yeah, we like to travel the world. Yeah, we have aspirations. But then these things kind of boost environmental the economy, but then they are kind of detrimental to environment. But then we really have to switch to cleaner production. Like what there is a whole branch of science and technology and implementation that deals with something called cleaner production. Like, okay, how can you produce energy in a cleaner form? Yeah, so can we switch to wind? Yeah, can we switch to geothermal energy? Can we switch to solar power? So if we can move away from fossil fuel towards this, or at least we can reduce the dependence on this for some time, and invest in technologies, we can achieve both environmental protection as well as economic development. Because we cannot. It is we are now in a position not to give up economic development for the benefit of environment alone, because it really we are not at there. So we have to work on it parallelly. So now we have to slowly switch to cleaner technologies and cleaner production and a cleaner lifestyle as well, because the change starts with us. Yeah. So like it all depends upon you and me. Like, okay, if I had to come from my house to the medical college, should I drive my own bike? Yeah, it is nice to come in RX 100. Yeah, but then should I do that every day, or can I take the bus or the train? Yeah. So so that way we can do some small things that can address both these things in a longer run.
Yes, sir. I completely agree with your point, sir. Now we have a question from Meenakshi. We need to be the change we want to see, but to achieve it on a large scale, we need the government support as well. We need their power as well to influence the masses. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, definitely, because the change has to occur at multiple levels. Like as I said, it is not that the changes are not happening. Maybe I think if you read up more, you'll see that there are many governments acting on. Like the government of India is investing a lot on it. Like even if you look into the Ministry of Water was renamed as Ministry of Water, Ganga Rejuvenation and Climate Change. Yeah. So there is a thought on it. Like now, even recently, I think a very big solar farm was launched. Yeah. So the government is taking a lot of initiatives towards climate action. So there are, but then the climate action that is being taken mostly is now on the mitigation side. Yeah. So they're trying to see how you can avoid climate action and not really much on adaptation. Yeah. So for the Dutch government here, they are making where I'm working. I'm in Netherlands. So the Netherlands government, they're kind of thinking about adaptation plans for the next 150 years from now. Yeah. So they're taking action both on adaptation and mitigation. The train company, which is fully now running on electricity, is regenerating its electricity from green sources. So the 100% of electricity that is being used by the trains in Netherlands are green energy. Yeah. So this is something that is happening at a massive scale. The technologies are kind of being passed on. Like maybe we are in India, we are good at adopting technology, we are good at developing technology, but then we also get a lot from outside. So technology is also being passed on from the places like in Europe or in US where it is being tested on ground. So as I said, there are also NGOs like Medicine Sans Frontier. Yeah, so they are working on climate adaptation as well. Red Cross also works a lot on climate adaptation. Greenpeace, as you might know, they are more into awareness. They they use awareness as a tool to create awareness. So actions are being taken on multiple levels. So Greta Thunberg from Sweden, I think she was an individual. Yeah, she went and started striking in front of the school or in front of the parliament on every Friday. But then that became a global movement. Yeah. So the change, as Shruti mentioned, it starts from a person, but then it can become big, like Greta's movement. Yeah, like from 1 it became to 4 million. Yeah. So I think it is good that we kind of remember that and we keep doing it. Yeah, that we don't give up. Like we need more Ishwas, we need more Shruti Ishar, we need more Abhilash, so who starts thinking and asking questions and start acting on it. Yeah. So I don't think our generation did enough, or now we started doing it, but then your generation has more time and chance to do more. Yeah. So I really have the hope that you will hand over the world in a better condition than how we are giving it to you.
Yes, sir. We will definitely strive to achieve the goal, sir. So I think we are a little short on time. So we have come to the end of this session. With maps, statistics, and colorful slides, Dr. Mohan Sundar has enlightened us on the repercussions of climate change on all strata of the society: nutrition, economics, job orientation, disaster management, and resultant health crisis. This webinar has touched not only medicine, but also all aspects of life, including meteorology, environmental science, sociology, geophysics, hydrology, and others. This multidisciplinary approach has been very interesting and informative, sir. I personally was especially moved by the final slide, which said, when concerned caregivers like us, with courage and conviction, speak, the world may not listen, but your patients will, changing one at a time. I'm sure that the viewers have benefited tremendously from the session. Thank you, sir. And it is my pleasant duty to thank all the viewers for the interest shown. Any feedback would be very helpful to us. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ishwar. Thank you all. I am open to further queries. I'll share the presentation with you so that you can circulate it among your fraternity.